They engaged in intimate encounters many times, not only in the office but even inside the cell blocks, the very place that was supposed to be the most secure and disciplined. But it did not stop there. The female guard secretly smuggled contraband into the prison and even granted this inmate privileges far beyond what other prisoners could ever receive. At this point, it was no longer a personal relationship. It had become a blatant betrayal of the entire system. Before we continue, drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts about this story. And if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit like and share so more people can see it. Most importantly, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. We post fresh content every day at the same time. A dramatic story. In the history of scandals inside American prisons, there have always been stories that made the public shocked and unable to believe that such things could truly happen. Not daring escapes through tunnels, not bloody uprisings that turned correctional facilities into war zones, but instead tragedies woven together from something that cannot be touched or seen, something invisible but extremely dangerous, human feelings and emotions. That is when the people who are entrusted with the responsibility of maintaining discipline, the correctional officers, the ones considered the gatekeepers of the prison system, let their own hearts cross the line of duty. They allowed themselves to be carried away by desire and affection, and in doing so, they traded their careers, their reputations, and even their freedom for a relationship that should never have existed. The story of a female correctional officer in the state of Alabama is one such example, shocking and unforgettable. It is a story that shook public opinion in the United States, was repeatedly reported by the media, and even became a topic of international discussion. Because this was not simply a scandal involving two people. It was a reminder, a warning about the cracks that exist within the prison system itself. It was proof that the line between authority and human weakness is thinner and more fragile than people often imagine. In the eyes of her colleagues and superiors, she was known as a serious, disciplined, and reliable officer. She rarely talked much. She always did her work properly, and she did not cause trouble. With more than 15 years of service, she had built up a stable position, received a decent salary, and was trusted by many. But all of that collapsed completely in just a short time, when she allowed herself to fall into a relationship that everyone considered absolutely impossible, an affair with a male prisoner she was supposed to guard. The beginning was not something dramatic. It came from very ordinary and small details, a few casual questions, a few times when their eyes met in the corridor, a few small gestures of concern. In the suffocating environment of a prison, those seemingly meaningless things suddenly carried weight, becoming a special source of attention. And behind that, in her private life, was a woman living in loneliness and emptiness. She had no husband, no children, and no warm family waiting at home. Her daily life was nothing but repetition. Work, return to her small apartment, eat, and then sleep. That cycle continued endlessly, and in that cycle, the prison became not only her workplace, but also the only place where she had human interaction. And so, a kind word, a warm smile, even if it came from a prisoner, also became like a beam of light shining into the dark and cold space of her life. Step by step, that beam of light grew bigger, and the professional distance that was supposed to be absolute gradually disappeared. She began to share more and more with him, about her work pressures, about her fatigue, about the long and lonely nights. The more she spoke, the more he listened. The more she confided, the more he created the feeling that he truly understood her. That was exactly the most dangerous point, because she gradually stopped seeing him as a prisoner. Instead, in her eyes, he became a man who could give her what she had always lacked, a comfort, sympathy, and the illusion of love. Eventually, their relationship crossed the line. What started with eye contact turned into secret exchanges. What started with short conversations turned into long meetings. And then, inevitably, it turned into physical intimacy, something that is absolutely forbidden within prison walls. Investigators later revealed that they had engaged in sexual activity many times inside the facility itself. They also exchanged gifts, passed secret notes, and even made promises to each other about the future, imagining a life together after he was released. When the truth came to light, the scandal spread quickly. The reaction of both the prison system and the American public was explosive. A female officer with more than 15 years of service, once considered a role model, had thrown away everything for an affair with an inmate. Her colleagues called it a slap in the face to the honor of the correctional profession. The media described it as proof that prisons may be built of steel, but the human heart is always vulnerable to temptation. From that point, a question hung in the air and would not go away. Why? Why would a woman with a stable job and a secure career, a person who had everything she needed to live a normal life, give it all up in exchange for something so dangerous? Was it because of blind love? Was it because of the prisoner's manipulative tactics? Or was it a mix of both factors, together with the invisible pressures of being a correctional officer? In this story, we will carefully follow the entire process, from the environment of the Alabama prison to the appearance of the prisoner who stole the heart of the female officer, to the formation of their forbidden relationship, and finally, to the devastating consequences. This is not just a story about love that went in the wrong direction, but also a costly lesson about the holes inside the prison system, and about how fragile people can be when they are faced with loneliness and temptation. The Alabama prison where this incident happened was known for its strict discipline. Hundreds of inmates were locked inside heavy blocks, surrounded by high fences and closely monitored by dozens of guards. On the surface, the system looked flawless, built to prevent any error. But in reality, wherever human beings exist, there will always be weaknesses. The work of a correctional officer might seem simple to an outsider. Check the cells, observe the inmates, and make sure rules are followed. But in truth, the pressure of the job was heavy and suffocating. Every day, they had to deal with harsh words, manipulative tricks, and sometimes violence. Every glance, every insult, every tense moment was enough to wear down their spirit. For the female officer at the center of this story, the job had once been something to be proud of. In the beginning, she did everything with enthusiasm, and she was considered an officer who could be trusted. For 15 years, she followed the rules, never once making a mistake. But slowly, the harsh environment of prison life ate away at her. She became a quiet woman, someone who rarely socialized, with very few friends and no family. When she returned home after work, All that waited for her was a small apartment filled with silence. No husband, no children, no warmth. Her days became repetitive. Work, return, sleep, and then repeat it all again. In such a life, even the smallest details became magnified. A kind word, a sympathetic look, things that many people might ignore, suddenly became meaningful. That was why when a prisoner showed her small gestures of attention, they became like a spark in the darkness she was living in. And from that moment, the first seeds of tragedy were planted. The prisoner involved in this scandal was not an ordinary man. He had charm, dangerous charm. With a strong masculine appearance, a calm way of speaking, and the ability to observe people's psychology, he stood out from the others. At first, it was just casual words, the kind that no one would think twice about. "You seem tired today," or "Thank you for treating us fairly." To others, they were meaningless, but to her, they carried weight. They made her feel noticed, seen as a person, not just a uniform. Gradually, he went further. He told her stories about his life, about his difficult childhood, about mistakes that he regretted, and about his desire to start over again once he was released. He painted a picture of himself not as a criminal, but as a man who had stumbled, who wanted redemption, who longed for a second chance. And she listened. Not only that, she believed him. Soon, she began to open up as well. She told him about her own private life, the loneliness, the endless repetition of her days, the silence in her home, and the weight of her job. She admitted to feeling invisible, like no one really cared. This was exactly what he wanted. Because once an officer allows herself to engage in private conversations with a prisoner, the professional line has already blurred. And he knew how to push her further and further into his world. It was a game of psychology, one that many experienced prisoners know how to play. Step by step, word by word, glance by glance, he wove a net around her, pulling her closer and closer, until, without realizing it, she no longer saw him as a prisoner, but as a man who could give her what she lacked: sympathy, attention, and affection. After months of these interactions, the inevitable happened. What began as just small exchanges turned into something bigger. Their conversations became longer. Their glances became more intimate. And eventually, their relationship crossed into the forbidden. It started with physical touches, a hand brushing against another, a quick embrace. Then it went further: kisses, secret meetings, and finally, sexual intimacy. According to the investigation, the female officer and the inmate had sex multiple times inside the prison. They did not just do it once, but repeatedly, in places that should never have been used for such acts. Sometimes it happened in offices, other times in areas of the prison where surveillance was weaker. Those places, meant to symbolize law and order, became their secret hiding spots. But it did not stop there. She began giving him special treatment. She smuggled in contraband, gave him small gifts, and passed him handwritten letters. She made him feel like he was different from other inmates, and in doing so, she betrayed her responsibility. This was not just a personal mistake. It was a betrayal of the entire system. Because when a guard crosses the line like this, the risk goes far beyond their relationship. The prisoner could have used her to plan an escape, to get access to weapons, or to start a riot. At first, her colleagues did not believe the rumors. To them, she was always the quiet, disciplined officer. But evidence soon appeared. Secret letters were discovered. Other inmates testified to what they had seen, and surveillance cameras captured images that left no doubt. The truth was undeniable. When the scandal was revealed, the Alabama prison system was shaken. The story quickly spread to the public, creating a wave of criticism. She was immediately suspended from her job, then arrested. She faced serious charges: having sexual relations with a prisoner, smuggling contraband, and violating professional ethics. In court, she cried and admitted everything. She said that she had truly fallen in love, that loneliness had blinded her, that she was not thinking rationally. But none of those excuses could erase what had happened. The law was clear. The rules of the prison system were clear, and she had broken them all. The prisoner, meanwhile, lost nothing. He remained behind bars, serving the sentence he already had. In fact, among the prison community, he became infamous, not as a victim, but as a man who had successfully manipulated a guard into giving him her body and her loyalty. For her, the price was devastating. 15 years of hard work disappeared overnight. Her reputation was destroyed. Her freedom was taken away. She had become what she once guarded against, a prisoner herself. The image of her sitting behind bars was more than symbolic. It was the cruel irony of the entire case. A woman who had once carried keys, who had once controlled the opening and closing of cell doors, now sat on the other side of those bars, trapped by the very system she had betrayed. The story of the Alabama female correctional officer who ignored everything and risked her entire career for a forbidden relationship with an inmate is not simply a scandal that shocked public opinion. It is a bitter tragedy, one that shows how fragile human nature can be, and at the same time, it is a warning that the walls of prisons may be built from steel and concrete, but the hearts of those working inside are still filled with cracks that can be broken. For the correctional system, this case was like a strong slap. A female officer who had more than 15 years of experience, who had once been seen as a model of seriousness and discipline, suddenly became a criminal. The trust of her colleagues collapsed. The reputation of the system was damaged, and the public began to doubt. If such a thing could happen for so long without being discovered, then what other hidden weaknesses were inside the prison system of the United States? In truth, this case was not unique. Reports and investigations over the years have shown that similar incidents have occurred in many states. The causes may vary. Sometimes it is the prisoner's manipulation. Sometimes it is the loneliness of the guards. Sometimes it is the lack of supervision. But no matter the reason, the result is always the same. An officer loses everything. A system is humiliated, and the public's trust is shaken. For the woman at the center of this story, the price she had to pay was too high. She lost her job, her dignity, her freedom, and her future. She became the very thing she had once guarded against, a prisoner. The image of her sitting behind the bars was more than just irony. It was the clearest proof of how easily authority can be destroyed when emotions overwhelm reason. Her case also carries another meaning. It shows that training and rules alone are not enough to prevent such tragedies. Correctional officers are humans, and humans carry with them emotions, weaknesses, and desires. If there are no psychological support programs, no strong supervision systems, no reminders about the dangers of manipulation, then similar incidents will continue to occur. This is not simply the downfall of one person. It is also the exposure of weaknesses in the system. Because when one officer allows herself to cross the line, it is not only her who falls. The entire correctional facility, and even the entire prison system, suffers the consequences. In the end, the lesson is clear. Authority does not mean invincibility. Wearing a uniform does not mean being immune to loneliness or temptation. And when weakness collides with responsibility, the cost can be catastrophic. She thought she had found love, but what she found was destruction. And perhaps the cruelest truth is this. In the prison where she once held the keys, she built a new prison for herself. A prison not made of steel bars or heavy locks, but built from her own wrong choices, choices that cannot be undone, and that will haunt her for the rest of her life.